All right, and good afternoon and welcome to our public meeting for Township of Horton for our budget meeting. Today is February 11th, just after 4, I guess 4:16, call to order, and land acknowledgement for today. As we gather today, I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We'd like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we're extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who've taken care of this land for thousands of years. Moving on to point 3 of our agenda, I'll ask for confirmation of public meeting agenda.
That council adopt the agenda for the February 11th, 2025 public budget meeting.
Motion by, thank you, Councillor Webster, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? Thank you. Number 4, any declarations of pecuniary interest for today? None being heard, we'll move on to section 5, and I'll pass it over to our CAO clerk, Hope Dillabois. Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight's purpose of the public meeting is to present the 2025 Horton Township budget, and I'll segue into the report on notice. The notice was published January 22nd in the edition of the Eagleville Leader, as well as posted on Facebook and website for the last month. Following those postings, no inquiries or questions have been asked of staff.
Thank you very much. No delegations being heard, we'll move on to section 8, and without further ado, I'll pass it over to our lead treasurer, Tally, for our 2025 budget presentation.
Thank you. All right, so this is our public budget presentation. Staff worked hard this year to keep the increase as low as possible without affecting our current levels of service. The budget is the most important document that we use, and it's referenced almost daily. It's a planning tool as well as a management tool to help guide the operations of the municipality. It incorporates financial information on approved and legislated municipal initiatives, programs, and services, and defines how resources are collected and allocated. There's 2 types of budgets that a municipality uses, the operational budget and the capital budget. So the operational budget refers to our day-to-day revenues and expenses, so salaries, wages, bills, office supplies, and just like maintenance costs of our facilities and equipment, and usually have a useful life of less than 1 year. Whereas our capital refers to the more tangible items which have a useful life of over 1 year, and the capital budget covers investments on physical assets, major projects that have a long-lasting impact on the organization's operations, such as the purchase of machinery, equipment, vehicles, construction to new buildings or facilities, and upgrades to existing roads or facilities. Ontario Regulation 588-17 serves as a framework that assists municipalities in effectively managing their infrastructure. It emphasizes proactive planning, monitoring asset condition, and ensuring that necessary funds are allocated for future repairs and replacement. The primary goal is to maintain infrastructure so it's in good condition for the long-term benefit of our residents. This regulation encourages municipalities to adopt a long-term perspective by having a clear understanding of future needs. This way we can plan accordingly, establish realistic budgets, and avoid unexpected expenses or crisis. Municipalities are mandated to make their asset management plans accessible to the public, enabling residents to see how their tax dollars are being utilized for infrastructure maintenance and improvements. For our budget that we're presenting today, 1% of the budget is $30,316, just for reference when we're talking about items. Federal and provincial funding is essential for municipalities to deliver essential services, foster community well-being, and drive local development. Without these external sources of financial support, municipalities would face more significant fiscal challenges, potentially leading to cuts in service or increased taxes for residents. The three main funding sources that Horton has come to depend on are OMPUF, which is Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. This year's allocation is $265,600, and it's increased 5% over last year. Canada Community Building Fund, 2025's allotment is $104,211, and it's an increase of 4% over last year. OSIF, which is Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, we will be receiving $158,924, which is a decrease of 14% over 2024, and that's just under 1% of our total budget. Departmental summaries. General government is seeing an increase of 5.47% over 2024. Some of the contributors are insurance rates have gone up a little bit again, cost of living increase for staff and council, the purchase of new computers this year, because we purchased those on a 5-year cycle just with technologies and having to keep up with that. And this increase could have been significantly more. However, the investments we've made through the year, the rate of return has been good, so that's helped with being able to keep those expenses down. Transportation. Transportation is seeing a significant decrease in their budget this year, although the large contributor to that is the purchase of the excavator last year. And where am I here? The decrease is definitely a reflection of diligent planning for capital projects and the use of our PSD software to map out and prioritize work required. By using the software, it assists staff to map out capital works to ensure that the residents are not overburdened with these expenses all at once. Unfortunately, infrastructure is a major cost. If we don't maintain and preserve as we go, we'll get ourselves into a situation that'll be tough to get out of financially. So it's good to kind of space it out over the years. Environmental services is seeing an increase of 11.45% over last year. As you're aware, the township is applying for an expansion of the current landfill site, and this has been an ongoing process since 2020. And the increase that they're seeing is primarily due to the additional consultant fees related to the application and the work required for the approval. Like the transportation department, the fire department is also seeing a decrease in the proposed 2025 budget of 5.13%. Even though there is an overall decrease in their department, it still includes the increase in insurance rates, additional hours to account for courses that our deputy chief plans on taking, station wear for 3 of our most recent hires, as well as still maintaining our regular reserve contributions. It should also be noted that unfortunately we don't have a control of the salary line item. It is variant on the number of calls we get, and it definitely does fluctuate, so that line is kind of hard to budget for. Chief Cole had applied for and was successful for the fire protection grant put out by Ontario Fire Marshals, and we've received approximately $8,200, and these funds are going to be used to purchase particulate hoods, gloves, and a deacon pack for on-site decontamination. Recreation is seeing an increase as a department. However, the monetary value of the result is the result of the community liaison position. Although this does have a financial impact, we have noticed that volunteerism, participation, and rentals have increased since Rachel has joined our team. And another contributor is the Town of Renfrew recreation agreement. We don't have a current agreement with them, but we are still budgeting based on our lapsed agreement, just to make sure that we have some funds in there. We can't assume there's gonna be much change, but we haven't been approached with a new agreement. But council will just have to, depending on what they come to us with, council will definitely have to think about if it is a big budgetary impact. We may have to consider doing the same thing we did with the library, like a user reimbursement sort of thing, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Protection, as you can see, they are going up 8.89% over last year. Earlier this fall, we received our OPP billing statements for 2025, and it was a large shock to everyone in the province. For Horton Township alone, we were going to see an increase of approximately $97,000, which would have been approximately a 3.4% tax increase overall. These increases were a result from their new collective agreements, and these costs were being passed down to the municipalities. There was such an uproar from everyone across the province that they decided they had to do something. And in November, we received a letter from the Solicitor General stating that they understood the impact of these changes and that they were providing some financial relief. So Horton will be receiving $75,241 to be applied to what we were originally billed. So that'll be a nice decrease, still not down where we would like it, but the other impact on this department is the OPP Detachment Board. The Community Safety and Policing Act came into effect April 1st, and the act directed that the detachment boards have to provide their respective municipalities with an estimated budget that had to be covered equally amongst the participating municipalities. So Horton's equal share for 2025 is $16,378. It's our understanding that once the board has a year under their belt, or part of a year, they're supposed to come back to our municipalities and give us an update and see if adjustments have to be made going into 2026, and hopefully we can build on that. Building and planning. The building department is operated on a cost recovery basis. Therefore, we don't allocate funds in the process. A report is brought to council every year after the year's complete to disclose whether we had to make a withdrawal from reserves or a contribution to reserves to balance it out to zero. And planning department, as we know, is never really consistent. It's all dependent on how many permits are taken out, so it's difficult to figure out a budget for that as well. So we kind of just go with the flow with that one and take it as it comes. Health services is seeing a significant decrease for 2025. This is due to the end of the agreement that was previously in place for our contribution to the Renfrew and Area Health Services Village for doctor recruitment. I had reached out to other municipalities who were also in that program, and although they're not deleting that line item, they are not budgeting for it either. If something does come forward for payment or to engage again, it definitely have to be brought to council and be outside the budget. And the library is just the regular 2% annual increase for our Horton residents to use the Renfrew Public Library. So this is the breakdown of the departments overall, excluding capital. So transportation being the most at 32%, general government at 23%, environment at 12%, OPP 12%. And I just want to make a note on that. Although OPP is under our protection, we like to pull it out from protection, just so residents can see how much we actually pay for the policing. Recreation is 9, fire is 8, building and planning 3, protection 2, library services 0.4, and health services 0.1. Proposed capital. So these are our proposed capital projects for 2025. General government is replacing our computer equipment, as these items are on a 5-year life cycle, and 2025 is the year tagged for replacement. These will be funded from the office equipment reserve. Our fire department is purchasing 5 sets of bunker gear. These were identified in our most recent development charges study. Therefore, the funds will be withdrawn from the DC reserve. The transportation department, rightfully so, generally has the most capital projects. The Johnston Road and Thompson Hill debenture payments, these are covered with a combination of OSIF funding and taxation. The gravel program is funded by a combination of taxation, development charges, and CCBF. The roads receiving work in 2025 will be Rattan Road, the north and south side of Jim Bar Road, and the west section of Oran Road. 70,000 will be contributed to work being done on Lockwinnow Road by McNabb Braeside, as it's a boundary road with Horton. This will be funded from development charges and the roads infrastructure reserve. Paved roads receiving work in 2025 are Collins Road, Palin Road, and the north section of Witten Road. These projects will be funded by a combination of development charges and roads infrastructure reserve and CCBF. The network projects mentioned will rehabilitate a total of 10.3 kilometers of roadway within the township. The automated vehicle locating systems will be added to the transportation vehicles. The 3 snow removal vehicles will have the live system, so it can be seen live wherever they are out, which will be helpful for tracking and assisting with complaint resolution. Whereas the other vehicles get a passive AVL, so it's the data's uploaded once they return to the garage. And this system will be funded from the roads equipment reserve. Lastly, for the transportation department, is the garage roof. The roof on the Public Works garage has been inspected and deemed that this roof is in a state of disrepair and will soon cause the roof to begin to leak and deteriorate. So that is not good in our asset management. So this project will be funded from the roads building reserve. Environmental services, as mentioned earlier, is the landfill site expansion project. So that is to accommodate for the extra engineering fees and field work that they have to do. And that will be funded from the environmental reserves. And the environmental service, the food cycler program, it will be funded. So a survey was sent out and there was lots of interest. So we are going to move forward with it, and this program will be funded through modernization reserves. And lastly, the repair on the Millennium Trail Bridge will be coming out of the recreation reserves. So this is the chart we use right now. We do it in Excel format, but now that all this data has been provided to PSD, we will be able to move away from the Excel spreadsheets and use use the software how it was intended to be used. So this year's contributions, we're proposing to contribute a total of $417,716. Office equipment will get $84.89. Building, general government building, $7,344. Election, $5,000. Fire, 37,516. Fire building, 5,100. Roads equipment, 123,805. Roads infrastructure, 137,603. Asset management, 6120. Buildings reserve, 22,973. Winter maintenance, 1147. And streetlights, 4161. Environmental services, the landfill site, 16,830. And the buildings, 3,060. And recreation, 33,466. And rec equipment, 5,100. So according to MPAC, the median residential assessment for the Township of Horton is 242,000. So this slide is showing that last year, the municipal portion, not including the county or the school boards, that the municipal portion for our median property was $1,459.57. So with the proposed 3.73%, that same 242,000 is now $1,514.01. So that's a difference of $54.44 annually on the median property. So property taxes are calculated by your property assessment times the property rate, and that figures out what residents are required to pay. So the property assessment is determined by MPAC. The property tax rate is set by the three bodies, so we would be the lower tier, the county would be the upper tier, and then the school board set their own rates as well. And so our total rate are those three combined. I know last year after the budget, because the median is it's not necessarily easy to relate to. So I did do a chart of different, starting at 100,000, and I did still highlight our median, but I brought it all the way up to $1 million, just so it's easier reference for people to kind of plug their assessment somewhere on the line. And we, excuse me, we did hear that the county had set their rate, so I actually did populate the county rate, so this will be fairly accurate to what, providing that this is approved, what it'll move forward with. So that kind of gives an idea there. And that's all I have, so I don't know if anybody has any questions or discussion.
Thank you so much for that detailed presentation and all of the information that went along with really good slides, lots of detail. I'll open it up as a public meeting. Any questions, comments, observations from anybody? Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just know how hard staff and our public members have inputted to get this to the number where we're at, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for doing that. And I also know that we had discussions in regards to the reassessment coming from MPAC. So we're putting lots of money into reserves at our current level to hopefully, when the MPAC reassessment happens, that maybe we can help out situations down the road for the ratepayers out there. But I think it's a good number that we should move forward with, and I want to thank staff again and our public members, Spencer and Susan, for their input to get to this number today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Webster, any other comments? Yes, Councillor Campbell.
I guess I have to echo the same. Great presentation. I know the numbers we start out with, and we when we send out to committees, and then the numbers all come back, we throw that on the wall, and we do our little shock expression and we look at our wants and needs and send it back and around for a second round. Discussions with public members, with the committee chairs. A lot of work does go into it before it even gets to your hands, Tally, and then you have to start populating all these numbers to make sense to us. So it's certainly, you've walked us through, the charts are great. I like the comparison you do with that 5-year surprise. It's not a surprise to you, but maybe to the residents where they're saying, why all of a sudden is it this high? Because of that 5-year catch-up that, we're looking at. And as Councillor Webster has just spoken to with MPAC, where, that's kind of a seesaw there where we're looking to see any reconciliation coming out of that. The breaking down of where the money, with the UMFA and all the funding we get, and then how it allocates to the departments. And again, I always wonder how we have a lot to do each year and how we manage to still bring in, I agree, sufficient number that we can put our heads up and say, we're not handing, the burden to the taxpayers. There's, the fundings come out, we put a number together and we agree collectively on, is this the right number that we can afford? But then I look at the checklist of all the stuff that's getting done. It's not just one department and the rest will have to wait. There's quite a recipe here of all the departments all getting, you'll see change, notable change this tax year. So I'm very pleased to see that, and with the committee chairs, a nod to them for, I know what they'd like to do, but what they can do with the money they have. So again, thank you for walking us through this presentation. I hope people out in TV land are watching this, and I wish there would have been more bodies here tonight. I like the in-person approach here. I did receive a few phone calls, and some of the comments you made, you must have received the same ones. So thank you for all that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. Any other comments? No? Spence?
Participatory democracy, it would be really nice to have some public participation, other than being the only person in the room who's fulfilling an oversight role, which I really quite enjoy doing. It would be nice if our ratepayers could avail themselves to understand how we come to these numbers, and how council has to deal with those who are surprised that their property taxes are increasing by 3%. But we all have a choice, and some are certainly going to take advantage of it, and most people won't. So, thanks.
Thank you. And if I add some commentary to that as well, I too was hoping that we would have some greater participation. I am seeing people watch online, so hopefully for viewing pleasure, they'll go back and review, because you gave a lot of really good content. And I want to echo that as well, that many of others said, is that the process that is gone through, while budgeting is very binary, the activities are so non-binary. From the OPP building that you mentioned through to the grant funding that I know that, and I'm looking at Adam, has been doing significant contributions towards, to our fire chief successfully having some grants, to the shifting in provincial funding is one side. The other side that struck me was when we did our budget meeting, we spent an awful lot of time, and I appreciate all of the context of discussion of where those wants and those needs really land. And it's not lost on me that when I was preparing for today, and you all know where I'm going to go here, there's 59 line items for revenue for 2024. The interesting thing out of 59 line items is that equates to $4.1 million into Horton. For Horton, out of that 59 line items, 2.9 million, or 73%, came from one line item. We all know what that one line item is. That's tax base. So 2.9 million of our 4.1 million revenue comes from tax base. There's a few other in there. There's one of 608 was provincial funding, which is fantastic. Interest on reserves, which is brilliant. That means you're doing some fantastic work getting us this interest. The rest of them, landfill, building permits, recreation, fundraising, they're less than 1% each. So they're fantastic for us, but they're really not going to move the needle relative to funding. When we dig into the tax revenue itself, there's 8 sources of tax revenue, of which one is us, residential tax base. Residential tax base makes up 2.383, or 83% of the 2.9. The other two that are close, kind of, sort of, is pipeline and then commercial, but they're in the hundreds of thousands, nowhere close to the 2.9. So the reason I bring that up is when we're looking at tax levies, it's always with mind of every penny we're spending is directly of the 4.1 going down to the 2.9 down to the 2.38 is a residential tax burden. So every penny that we're spending, 83 cents of that is being provided by a tax on a residential. So when I put it into perspective that way, I am concerned at any type of increase. The 373 is a concern for me when I look at, and thank you for updating right in real time because that only came out today, a 5.5 at county. You know, that's about $45 per $100,000 of MPAC assessment. That's not insignificant. I don't know about the rest of you, but filling up my vehicle these days hurts. So it's not lost on me. I have had concerns expressed to me about our budget increase. I think it's been exceedingly well vetted. I would love to see it less than 3.73, but I understand that going significantly less would not do a whole lot. And the 0.5% increase that we recommended on top of staff is 15%. Or sorry, $15,000. So it's not insignificant, but it's equally not worrisomely large. I offer that today of if there's any additional context of how we could leave more money in our residents' pockets, given the geopolitical or geo challenges that we're facing economically right now, that would be my desire. But again, the number of people here tonight maybe makes that a non-issue. Thank you, Tally. Thank you, staff. And thank you, council, for a real collaborative session this year. After all of that, any other comments or questions from anybody? No? None being heard? Going second? Any from staff? None being heard? All right, we'll move on to public questions or concerns. I don't believe we have any, unless Spencer, you'd like to. No, thank you, sir. And why don't we move on to agenda point number 11, confirming bylaw.
That, excuse me, that council enact bylaw 2025-11 confirming bylaw.
Would I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Webster. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for this afternoon. And it is 4:49, and we'll call that adjourned.